Thanksgiving. Today's the day, for Americans, to celebrate friends and family and togetherness and look, who are we kidding? It's about food. Food, turkey food, parade food, football food. Sure, all that other stuff is part of it, but that happens for every celebration. Thanksgiving is really a harvest holiday, so food is very important to it. I love food. Well, not since forever. I was a picky eater as a kid. So I guess I have to say I'm thankful today for the obvious character flaw I've overcome. You know who else likes food?
Louie.
For those of you who are uninitiated, starting in Pikmin 2, the Piclopedia was created, allowing you to learn more about the treasures you collect, and more importantly to this video, the enemies you defeat. Okay, Pikmin 1 did have the creature montage after the ending credits of the good ending, but that's slightly different. Anyways, the newcomer, and let's face it, the antagonist of the series, Louie, is so obsessed with food. Rather than something similar to Olimar's scientific notes, he makes comments on how he would cook and eat them. That's actually hilarious. So that's got me thinking, with all these descriptions of foodifying these creatures, which ones are the tastiest? And because the Piclopedia was carried over into Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Pikmin 4, there are even more entries than their original ones in Pikmin 2. But wait! There's more! Pikmin 4 allows Louie to give notes on treasures for the first time. And, well, because some of those treasures are real-life foods, I get to add those to the list as well. Actually, I wanted this to be the second video after the Sonic theme ranking video, but I wanted to finish Pikmin 2 before making this, and well, I'm not good at the game. Nor should I say it's not very good to me.
What about Hey Pikmin? Huh?
Who said that? There is no Hey Pikmin in Ba Sing Se. Also, there's no Louie in Hey Pikmin to give notes to anyways, which is good because I don't know how to get a good recording off of my 3DS with my Elgato that I just learned to use. Full disclosure, except for the ones that are only in 2 or 3, I'm going to be using the Piclopedia from Pikmin 4. It has the most entries after all. And from what I can tell, most out of the ones that have repeat appearances have the same Louie notes anyways. And for the ones like the Jousmite that do have different entries,
Fuck 'em.
Alright, let's feast.
And he really makes a mighty fine jelly bean and pickle sandwich for what it's worth.
Well, the Sunseed Berry, Vanishing Cookie, and Condensed Sunshine are at the bottom here because simply I'm allergic to strawberries, and they can potentially kill me if I ate them. I would have to say that the Sunseed Berry is slightly than the Condensed Sunshine because of an instance I had when I was a kid that involved strawberry jam residue from a dirty butter knife getting into the butter I used for a sandwich, causing me to have an unexpected and sneaky reaction. At least when I see an actual strawberry, I can be 100% sure that I can see it and can avoid it. And the Vanishing Cookie is above the Sunseed Berry because there is a potential of me being able to eat around the jam and still enjoy the cookie, although that is very unlikely. Yeah, white Pikmin are poisonous to everyone, but at the very least they only take a chunk of your health off at a time. Yeah, I bet you chipped a tooth.
It's a stone, Louie.
Yeah, apparently dogs are some of the things that Louie won't eat, according to his notes, at the very least. And naturally, I agree. That's why the Ancient Sirehound and Moss are down this low. Moss is lower because on top of not wanting to eat a dog, her being homophobic makes it especially unappetizing. Now I'm gonna get into a small bit of theory crafting, but the creation of glow Pikmin seems to make the byproduct of glow sap. And the thing that we learned from the story is apparently glow sap is extremely tasty and nutritious. So the glow Pikmin probably have similar quality. However, they are down the slow and because Louie says, "They don't smell alive." Yeah, no one, including all the other captains, don't really know what glow Pikmin are. They don't even know if they are even Pikmin. And as the old adage says,
don't put things in your mouth when you don't know what they are.
The Hydro Dweevil seems to have some sort of toxin that acts as a drug that causes involuntary spasms and unpaid labor. I don't mess with that. The only reason the aspiration ritual ball is even on this list is because Louie took a bite of it thinking it was fruit, and honestly, I thought it was at first too. At the very least, it's made out of wood, which is at least made by a plant and therefore food adjacent. Lots of fiber in there too. Lots. Hold on. Foie gras? That's illegal. Also body shaming. She's not a beast. She's just very, very pregnant. Louie really is the villain.
He ain't half bad. Ain't half good either.
Yeah, the process of removing poisonous internal organs and serving them up sashimi style sounds oddly close to fugu. Doesn't seem worth it. Same thing goes for the startle spore. It's higher than the prickle puff because I think removing just a tongue is probably easier to do than the internal organs, because the tongue is easier to get at and the startle spore is significantly bigger. So handling it should be easier, and that's a boon too. That being said, still doesn't seem worth it. And again, the Anode Weevil is a similar issue, but instead of being poisonous, has the chance to fucking explode you. Look, I can barely explain a bad trip I once went on, so I'm not going to. I don't want to talk about it. I saw the void, and it looks like the water wraith sent Louie on a similar trip. I didn't shit myself though, I just threw up and passed out. And the plasm wraith isn't much better, it just seems to have the same effect. It's only one slot higher because apparently it smells of citrus. That's just a little bit more pleasant. The deceptive snack is a senpai.
That's good.
Covered in nori.
That's bad.
Yeah, I just don't think nori tastes good, if it has any taste. I will admit, it does have a good mouthfeel. And the sticking to your gums and back of your lips is fun, but the main reason that it isn't further down is because those rice crackers are pretty good. Okay, folks, the Shaggy Longlegs has one of my favorite notes from Louie, mainly because it's one of the ones where he's just the most pissed off about how bad it tastes. He generally seems to hate these things. And I think it's because he tried to eat it without properly shaving off the hair. Because his entry for the Baldy Longlegs, which is essentially a Shaggy Longlegs without the hair, he's considerably more chill in just saying that it's just not as tasty as it looks. And because they don't look that good to begin with, they're this down low. The Shaggy being lower because it still has hair you gotta shave off. The Munge and Venom Dweevils are two different species that have the same exact note. They stinky and are best avoided. The Munge is higher because purple's my favorite color.
Yeah, suck it, Blue.
I'm going to interpret Louie's comment here is that it's not inedible because it tastes like chicken. It's inedible and it happens to taste like chicken. So it's a pretty alright tasting thing that's probably just like too hard and hairy to be edible. Yeah, a musky scent isn't much of a deterrent as you would think it would be. It's mainly because if it's meant to be served to people that you want to get out of your home, it can't be that good. Again, the smell isn't much of a deterrent to me, but mostly Tendons does make an unpleasant mouthfeel and will likely get this Tektite stuck in your teeth for a long time. At first I had the doodle bug to be higher than where it is now, because I misinterpreted Louie's notes here, as it seemed to have a similar description to Limburger cheese, where yet the smell does surprise, but the taste does delight people. But then I read it again, realized the taste doesn't delight people, so it fell hard. I don't care if the cannon and ammo stockwell are removed. Them being present in the Groink's anatomy has got to affect the flavor in a very negative way. Whack. Case in point, the volatile dweevil is ammo stockpile. And even Louie acknowledges that eating its meat is, to be blunt, a bad idea. This dish is made purely of support food. Its flavor profiles are not balanced at all. Yeah, I don't really like sweet potatoes that much. I've never been a fan of sweet potato casserole or fries. The raw ones are okay-ish. They kind of taste like carrots to me, but like not enough. I kind of have a big beef with mangoes. The stones are too big and oddly shaped. They are somehow both too sweet and sour and bitter at the same time. Getting them out of their skin is an annoying chore. The flesh is stringy in a way that would be annoying if it were meat, and it is detrimental because it is fruit. The one thing I can say positively about mangoes is that they are properly juicy, which is what fruits should be like in an ideal world. And the astringent clump isn't getting off the hook either there. Sure, a lot of people claim that they like grapefruit, but even they can't have a spoonful without dousing the thing in sugar for each bite. At this point, cereal is probably healthier breakfast. Folks, there are better ways to get vitamin C in the morning. If I were to have made this video 10 years, or even just 5 years ago, the sweet torrent would have ranked much higher. But as I get older, the less and less I like donuts. Which is a shame, because Claire's are the best types of donuts too. You know, it's kind of funny. Everyone says they don't like product placement or being advertised to, but no one liked it when they took the product placement out of the re-release of Pikmin 2. Okay, enough of the pretenses. It's advertisement time. Patreon. It's as simple as that. If you want to support me, I have one. And depending on what tier you can get early access to my YouTube videos, early access to chapters of Reap, and commentary tracks on either of them. So if you want to support me, you can find me down at patreon.com/c/sandalswagger. Links in the description. Also links to Reap.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I do think winged Pikmin have potential to taste good-ish. The problem is that they are the runt of the Pikmin species. There's not a lot of them to eat. Yeah, I think avocados are very overrated. They don't really taste like much on their own, really. Their only use in guacamole is to actually make it into a dip. Because all the other vegetables and spices and lime juice that you put into it is actually what makes the guacamole taste good. The avocado is simply the green glue that has cooler friends. The stone is fun to play with, though. With the fire-breathing feast, it doesn't matter if you get red or white ones. You have to admit, there's not really much flavor in there. It's just sort of sweet. Although I would have to admit that using dragon fruit as a sort of sugar substitute is a pretty fair argument for them. But them on their own, it's a pretty bland and forgettable experience that looks good in a still life painting. You know, I had no idea that golden kiwis even existed until Pikmin 4. And judging by Louie's description of it here, it's a vastly inferior to the green ones. It just ain't right. You know, I've never actually had a persimmon before, but from what I could tell, they are harder, sweeter tomatoes, basically. And that just doesn't gel with me. Just like the golden kiwis. Let's keep kiwis and tomatoes tart and or earthly. Thank you very much. Now, shish kebabs are a great concept of basically a hot salad on a stick. I'm surprised it's more associated with barbecues than, fair food. Because that seems like it would be the perfect thing for a fair. However, how good they are all depends on what is put on the shish kebab. And from the looks of it, the second of the 4 grill brothers seems to be a pineapple. I fucking hate pineapple. My issue with pineapple on pizza isn't that it's on pizza, it's that it's pineapple. The Aristocats in the 1700s had the right idea of only using the pineapple to look at rather than eat. Because, admittedly, it is a very nice thing to look at. The only reason that this isn't any lower is because the first, third, and fourth brothers are actually things that seem pretty good. Yeah, no, fresh meat is a good idea, but not necessarily legs still wiggling on the grill fresh. Still want to try it though. I think it would cook better if left in the original crystal shell it's got though. Yeah, the idea of a self-tenderizing meal with meats that kind of a nutty undertone sounds great. However, it seems that these guys are also easy to overcook. I don't want to deal with something that is a choking hazard after that. And from the looks of it, these guys don't look like they're safe to eat undercooked either. Okay, sour, salty, sweet roulette actually does seem kind of fun. Almost like you're putting a bowl of M&M's, Skittles, and Reese's Pieces into the same bowl. But the unappealing bit is that these are bloodsuckers. So they are also kind of likely to be carrying some kind of unpleasant diseases? Maybe? Yeah, best to avoid these. Now, the thing about eggplants, or aubergines, or foolish fruits, regardless of what you call it, they are very mediocre squashes. Their appeal, other than their use in Texan culture, is probably because of the added color you get when you put them into any dish. I do like it when Louie's comments give multiple ways to eat a thing, but the thing is, the yellow spectralid seems to be mostly alright. Best used as an herb or spice from the looks of it, except for, not a plant. I was really hoping that these annoying little snitch bugs would have been more useful for their culinary uses. But apparently only those tiny little wings are worth a thing, meaning a vast majority of that bug meat is discarded. And I despise food waste. Apparently, white spectralids can be a good anti-vegan substitute for a bloomin' onion, and therefore probably a good substitute for onions in other recipes. The problem with lemons is that in media they're depicted as sour, hence why they're called face wrinklers here, but I find them to be more bitter than sour, so that's why I put these this low. They are liars, and that is unacceptable. The moldy sloosh is up here higher than most of the other stuff that you have to extract the poison out of down below, because it seems that the poison that these guys have is less likely to kill you other than the neurotoxins and such that the others have. Still though, I don't want to deal with tummy aches, especially crippling ones. The Iceful Dweeble seems to be not all that tasty by this description it's got. Because, yeah, while making fruit juice popsicles is fun and all, especially with the idea of potentially edible sticks, they just don't seem to have much use in other dishes, or even on their own. Although, it would probably make those popsicles last longer, so that's a bonus. I'm not so sure about a Wally Hop burger compared to a beef one. But it would be worth to try, just to try it, if not just for revenge. Bird fowl meatballs seems like a bit of a gamble, not to mention the moral implications of consuming those downy snagrets. It could be interesting, but probably best to avoid for both moral and health reasons. The peckish aristocrab hot pot sounds pretty good, actually, but you just had to go and ruin it with something like liver paste. Should have left well enough alone. Yeah, Wally Hop jerky seems like it could go either bad or good, although I do wonder if Louie is saying that the eyeballs and legs are the best part, so don't dehydrate them, or they're the best parts after you dehydrate them. Best not to ponder for too long. Something about the recipe for Snowy Blowhog just makes me want to gather my friends around the top of the closest clock tower. Honestly, from the looks of those eyeballs, Louie is correct that they would mesh well with okra, especially the seeds. And when you say sour cream, then you got my attention. Going by both the dwarf and mature frosty bulborb, it seems you could get a good sweet or savory steak out of either of them. I'm gonna have to put the dwarf one in the higher slot though, mainly because it's probably easier to thaw out due to its size. You have to give it to Louie. He is thinking practically with how ice pickmen are probably even better at preserving food than a freezer is. That being said, they've also got to be pretty satisfying to jump down on. Tearing the meat from the body and eating it raw, it seems pretty vicious and probably, worth it because the meat is marinating in its own nectar. But it's marinating to the point where it might just, fall apart into inedible shreds and slop if you ever tried to cook it. I mean, there's not really much left to discard. The pyroclasmic sloosh is mostly tongue after all. Still, it's down this low mainly because I don't want to go and be bothered to set up and take down a charcoal grill to cook these. If Louie said a propane grill, though, on the other hand. The toady bloister doesn't seem like it has much flavor, but it does make up for itself a little bit with the added texture to any stir fry that's added to. It does seem like it would smoke a lot while you're cooking it, though. The flighty joust mite doesn't seem like it makes good meat or a meal unto itself, but I will hand it to it for being a key ingredient for some pretty decent sounding spicy sauce. I don't like the sound of Louie slipping things into people's food while they're not looking. Hopefully it's because the phosphat looks weird and not for any nefarious reasons. This description also doesn't really give much of an idea of the flavor of the phosphat, but if they are perfect for hot pots, then they can't be too bad, can't they? Pears are apples with inferiority complexes. They are way too soft, way too dry for their softness, and they seem to have lost most of their flavor. They can do in a pinch if you can't find any apples, but the doctor is right to hate them.
Don't let me eat pears. I hate pears.
I love this burger. It's so delicious.
I think papayas are like mangoes if they were done right, but that still doesn't make them perfect. Still pretty mid. Satisfying crunch, you say? Mayhaps this could be a suitable replacement for chips, or I suppose with the shape of the leg, something more like dipping pretzels? Of all of Louie's steeds, this is definitely the one that's most worth eating. The red spectralid seems to be of the marked spectralids to have the most flavor and versatility. I like that. This is the same thoughts I have for the Titan Dweeble. But these dipping chips just seem a little bit more appetizing. I do love the idea of melting your mouth meat. This is a very briskety sort of meal. Just the idea of introducing the candied glaze to the unmarked spectralids is what makes it most appealing of all spectralids, above all the marked ones. It seems that the entire time the dwarf bulborbs been Jake-suited by the parasitic mold caused the meat to become jerkified while staying moist. That has to be an interesting experience, and I must try it. Is the toadstool worth it to try? It's worth it enough. Burying it underground is a little risky, considering you might forget where it is, but I suppose if you put it into a pot or a terrarium inside, it could still work. And yeah, just because it stinks terrible doesn't mean it's not gonna taste pretty good. Aristo crab soup actually seems pretty good, especially if you can keep them in the shell. These ones, specifically being juvenile, seems to indicate that their shell is soft, so you'd be able to eat them without shelling them. and ergo get nice crunch out of them. Just be wary about the claws. Grass meat is probably an acquired taste for most people, and I'm sure I could acquire it. Purple grapes tend to have a little bit of a slime to them, and I don't really like. But since Louie's brought it up, their juice is extremely good. You know, the name dumpling implies the existence of a larger dumple, and deep-fried battered dumples seem pretty tempting. Now, I wonder if you could make a dumple dumpling. Starfruit do taste good, but the thing is they have a weird loose skin and waxy texture on the outside, which is really what drags it down for me. I do like its sweet and sour flavor, and talk about juicy fruit. This is one of the best descriptions, that's also a recipe, that Louie has given. It starts out crunchy, but the more you chew, the softer it becomes. And it's minty fresh. Sounds like some good gum to me that you can swallow. Now, artichoke soup already sounds good to begin with, but adding in breadbug meat just seems to improve it. Let's not forget that most bulborbs are types of breadbugs that only look like bulborbs. Isn't it creamy? I think waffles are just alright. But Louie giving the idea of using the waffle not only as a couch, but also big juice cups is pretty off-putting. I'm not gonna lie. Well, Louie never actually explained how to discharge the node beetles, so I'm gonna guess I'm gonna have to eat it with the tingly sensation. But I don't know if it's gonna be an unpleasant one. I used to purposely grab the electrical fences at my Graham's farm simply because I like the tingly sensation. I'm not above eating fresh mollusks. Sometimes those are even better when they're raw. But yeah, the chances of toughened up meat does have a considerable drawback. This may sound like eating boogers to begin with, but it's not. No, but this meaty shaved ice does seem appealing to me. Plus, I think the rest of the body probably still tastes like sea salt ice cream that the snowy blowhog had. Just more of it. I'm not so big on green curry, but the way Louie described the base meat of the spotted bull bear being juicy and fragrant seems appealing to me enough. Eating a grub while it's full of eggs, it seems weird and all, but it almost feels like it's going to be a meaty boba candy of sorts. A snowflake fluttertail sorbet actually does seem pretty good, even more so than the blizzard blowhog. The antenna and wing garnishes are a nice touch as well. It's always nice to be fancy every once in a while again. This seems like a nice treat you'd get on special occasions, like a graduation or during Thanksgiving. Or really any other time you would have stuffed food to stuff you up. A loquat is another thing I never really heard of until Pikmin 4 came out, let alone, tried one. But apparently it tastes kind of like a peach or a plum, so that elevates it. But what brings it down is the flesh to stone ratio is just way too off. The jumbo bulborb seems to be pretty good in a crock pot with tender meat like that. It's also nice that it's one of the few enemies that seem to have several different cuts of meat. Variety is nice. I'm a chuckster. I mean, an acquired taste usually means it's worth it to me to acquire that taste. Plus, the way that it's shaped, it really does add into the ease of the consumption. Now, I've never had a bamboo shoot before, but from what I can tell, they taste not too dissimilar from asparagus. Honestly, that sounds pretty good. Pandas are obsessed with these for a reason, after all. Of course, when they're fully grown into stalks, of course, but still. The maestro flavor seems alright. Just the thing is, tuna is one of the most played out and boring flavors of commonly eaten fish. It's kind of boring to me. The rest of the sushi is what's keeping it out of a lower tier, though. Now, I do love me a croissant, but the thing is, a croissant is just so flaky. It leaves so many crumbs. And I don't like cleaning up after a croissant. Also, I kind of prefer the taste of the cheaper margarine-made croissants that usually look like actual crescents. Sure, the mountain of meat is flavorous on its own, But that's where you get the joy of getting to infuse it with flavors of your own while you cook. The giant bread bug is a chance to be experimental, I say. Okay, honestly, slightly metallic meat is sometimes just what you want. And sure, there's not really much meat in a man of legs, but from the looks of the meat that you can see, it is very tender and chewy. Very nice. Louie mentioned that the young bread bug has nutrients in it that entries of the giant bread bug lack any mention of. So it seems to suggest to me that the bread bugs lose nutrients as they age and get older, but have a trade-off of having more meat. I prefer the nutrients. I don't know why, but Louie's description of peeling and boiling the albino bulborb seems appealing. Almost if you were turning it into a meaty banana, down to peeling it, and probably even has a similar texture of the meat. One thing I've missed ever since I moved out of South Carolina is the low and slow cooked barbecue. It's unfortunately not really a thing up here in the Midwest. And Louie suggesting it for the swooping snitch bug got me excited. Also, I love how we actually get to use everything but the wings. So it's a bit of an inverse and significant improvement of the bumbling snitch bug. I don't know, but the way Louie says to crack it open makes it not only seem appetizing, but fun to do. Bring your friends along. Muscular on one side, fatty on the other. Sure's nice to have options. I'm pretty sure that because of the electricity, the shock cake doesn't have the fatty option that the freeze cake does. But Louie does at least give us a recipe on how to cook the thing, and this recipe seems pretty good. From Louie's note here, it sort of gives the impression that he's saying you should pluck everything off and then cook everything inside of the head as if it were a pot. That sort of meal preparation is pretty novel, and if that's what he's going for, I'd like to see how it goes. And if it's not what he's going for, this is just a very long crab, and its arms and legs have a good amount of meat in them, as well as in the head. Looks like this is completely edible. Tastes like mamuta. These whisker pillars seem to have a very shrimp-like taste. They're also apparently very versatile in the kitchen. You can't go wrong with them in a dish. I much prefer green grapes to purple ones in terms of flavor. Plus, they are perfect for use in grape salad. Kind of like how Granny Smith apples are the best used when making apple pie. Okay, well, yes, the fruit of the Quagmire collapse indeed does look tasty and juicy and sweet, which is why it's in this position. But what does the tongue taste like? Is it like the fruit? What about the feet? Those look like they could be bitter roots of the fruit. For once, I don't think Louie was curious enough. But again, that fruit does look pretty good. I do like it when whatever you're cooking comes with a thing to cook it with. Very convenient and cool.
Now we're talking.
The red and yellow Pikmin are here because, well, they reminded Almar of his Pick carrots, and it's pretty likely they taste similar to actual real-life carrots. Probably just a little bit spicier, but that's not a bad thing. Yellow ones are one step above red because the ears give them a bit more of a yield. Louie seems to describe Flarlick as pretty much garlic. And, well, unless your name is Wario, garlic isn't really a food unto itself. But as an herb, it is one of the best and most well-utilized ones. I love nectarines. They're a hell of a fruit, but mainly as a fruit. I think jamming nectarines, which is what the filling of the Hardy container is, actually detracts from the experience. Also, I kind of feel stupid because it wasn't until making this list that I realized that this is a reference to the Zelda heart containers. Louie's crazy to only consider limes as odor diffusers. They're just amazing fruits, and unlike lemons, they actually do make your face wrinkle. So it's even more than just a zest bomb, I say. Remember when I said that shish kebabs are a great concept, but they're only as good as the sum of their parts? This is what I was talking about. A burrowing snagret and onion shish kebab is a great idea. Now that's good thinking, Louie. You know, sometimes a simple recipe is all you need. And especially with something like quartering a Herculean, well, when it's already halfway there. That and it being an egg breadcrumb batter fry just seems pretty good. I don't know about you, but I've wanted to try squid ink pasta ever since I found out it was a thing. And now I'm guessing squid ink stir fry is a thing based off of Louie's comments on the sputtlefish. It makes me want to try that as well. The pileated snagret not only has a similar recipe to its burrowing cousin, but Louie's second recipe with it here, where it basically gets marinated from the inside out while being barbecued, also sounds pretty damn good. The hermit crawdad seems to have solved the problem that real-life crawfish has by just giving it more meat in its yield. So that's a big plus. I would have never thought of doing what Louie suggests and using shellfish meat in chocolate fondue, but those clashes in flavors do seem like an interesting try. Pre-cooked meat is one of the best things about living in a modern society. And a creature that pre-cooks its own meat could even potentially help with the world hunger crisis if it's farmed correctly. The Joustmite and Cloaking Burrownit are two creatures, again, that have the same exact preparation and consumption method, which is even more annoying because they look almost exactly the same. Why even have them as separate species anyways?
But she's got a new hat.
Whatever the reason, the Joustmite is one step higher because I think the fins on its shell makes it easier to remove said shell. Let's face it, the bug-eyed crawdad is basically just a lobster, and lobsters genuinely taste pretty good. They're considered fancy for a pretty alright reason. And trust me, as with most meats, they do taste better grilled than boiled. Are you listening, England? The Atene beetle entry here seems appealing mainly because of the highly underrated peanut sauce that is suggested to be used on it. Seriously, if you've never had the pleasure of eating something with peanut sauce, you are surely missing out. The Titan blowhog, if I were to guess, would most likely taste similar to that of a fiery blowhog. But yeah, difficulty carving really does put a dampener on it. While it is disappointing you can't really make food out of skeeter skates, I will admit that I do enjoy my zesty beverages. Well, if something is sought out after by a lot of people other than just Louie, you know it has to be tasty good. Although I do wonder what the rest of the body tastes like, because just eating the claw seems to be a big bit of waste to me. The Medusal Slurker is honestly a more interesting thing to look at than the jelly floats that they replaced in 3. But as I haven't mentioned either of them yet, I can't say that they evidently taste better though. Tangy and fresh sorbet are always a good thing though. A bolder and tangier egg scramble does sound appealing, and the real drawback being the small size of the eggs. Now, you have to be careful when deep frying mollusk meat with herbs and spices, because those can easily overpower the flavors of your desired mollusk to be eaten. But thankfully for the Raging Boyster, Louie mentions poaching it as an alternative instead. I mean, who says you gotta tenderize it? Probably still tastes as good as the OG3, but with more meat on it. I'm just gonna ignore Louie's idea of starting his own cooking show, as good of an idea as that is, and say that the iridescent glint beetle probably doesn't taste too dissimilar from the iridescent flint beetle. It is just one step lower than the flint beetle because its rarity makes it harder to find and ergo harder to eat. However, the iridescent flint beetle soup does seem pretty appetizing. Unlike the skeeter skate, the mutter skate does apparently have enough meat to still be enjoyed. And gritty meat may seem unappealing for most people, but for me, I like it. It makes me think of eating, well, anything while at the beach. While the withering blowhog doesn't seem to make for a good food by itself, its ability as a pseudo cayenne pepper, it's probably the best tasting spice that can improve the experience of even ice cream, really does improve the versatility of these laughing. Now, the thing about mousse is that it's got one of the best textures out there. And honestly, chocolate sheerwig mousse, not that type of mousse, does seem appealing. Not only is the idea of a smoked egg from this thing great, because that's big egg, the flavor of the belly and the head being described as warming in its sensation, that has to be experienced at least once. Okay, I have to say this seems like a lovely meal. Okay, well, having the apparent consistency and taste similar to that of soft cheese is always appealing and a good sign. I'm from Wisconsin, you know. Pork stew isn't something I think about often, but whenever I have, it's always been a good time. One thing he forgets to mention is to make sure that all the tusks are removed, though. It can't be too pleasant to have those things going down your throat. I know you're probably thinking gelatin as the type of gelatin we get when we make Jell-O, but Louie's description of it being usable hair gel makes me think it's similar to a consistency of toothpaste, which solves the problem of its gelatin taste being pretty much nothing by an easy solution of mixing in your favorite fruit to flavor it up. Basically, this is what I was saying about the lesser jelly float, but Lou actually mentions it. On top of the clam noodles that you get out of Louie's recipe, you also end up with a pretty shell and a pearl after your meal. Provided that the chef doesn't take it first. I've never had octopus sausage before, but I have had octopus, and judging by what Louis says here, octopus is octopus whether it's sausage or not. These meat fritters seem annoying to make, but apparently worth the effort. Although I don't think I would be garnishing anything with something that looks like a balloon. The sweetening of the meat of the schnootwhacker as it goes from miniature to mammoth is very, very appealing. The possibilities are endless indeed. I, like most children, did not like tomatoes when I was small. However, unlike probably you, it's because I didn't like ketchup. So I assumed what it was made out of tasted bad. I still hate ketchup, but at least now I know that tomatoes are delicious. But yeah, not only are cherry tomatoes too small to be filling, they are a little too tart for their own good. Look, I didn't know egg sushi was a thing. I thought the meat of the sushi had to exclusively be seafood. This has opened my eyes to a world of new possibilities.
You're right, it's delicious! You should have told me!
Okay, sure, candy pop buds may be too spicy for salad, but that doesn't mean that they are too spicy for other things, like burgers. It's time to be creative with these things. Most of the time, I find hors d'oeuvres to be just snacks, but tastier. I do think that the Pellet Posey's supple pellets are gonna be really, really tasty, considering that they are the perfect hors d'oeuvres. Okay, Louis doesn't really mention how they taste, more so the minute details of the onion. But you have to consider that the florlicks are what are used to upgrade the max output of the onion. So they've got to taste somewhat similar. And thanks to the influx of pellet posies, which seems to be the Pikmin's natural go-to if they never came across a captain to throw them, it's got to be a mixture of those as well. So the perfect hors d'oeuvres mixed with garlic, it's gotta be a good step up from the just perfect hors d'oeuvres. At first, I thought the cookie of nibbled circles was a coconut cookie, but it turns out it is Kerstkrankgest, a Dutch Christmas cookie that is buttery and nuttery. I've had cookies like that before. I just didn't know what they were called. By the way, if it were a coconut cookie, it would have not changed my ranking on it all too much. Same position, just a slightly more strong hold of the position. I've never had an Asian bear, But from my research, they seem closer to apples than Western pears are. So that brings them up to speed a little bit. And according to Louie, they are also pretty juicy, so I like that. Also, I've never had a mangosteen before, but apparently it's quite similar to lychees. And those are very underrated fruits. Because it is described as being a good spice, even on its own, it's apparently a meat that you don't have to season that much, because it's already seasoned itself. A snowy bulbarb spinach blue cheese salad actually sounds like something I should eat more of for that riboflavin, if snowy bulbarbs actually existed in the first place. Looks like Louie reinvented popcorn with these guys. Okay, I think blue Pikmin probably taste a lot like red, yellow, and purple ones, but I, like Louie, want to stick my hand in their mouths to see what happens. Savory steaks? Those are the best type of steaks. I can't tell if this is side dish or dip, but either way, it seems pretty good.
Oh, I do like a bit of gorgonzola.
Lightly crusted. Now that is a good way, a hard way, but a good way, to cook meat. The watercress also would add a good bit of texture to it. This is another simple one, and sometimes simple is what you're looking for. Sweet and sour meat's always a good idea. There's a reason that sweet and sour chicken is one of the more popular American Chinese staples out there. While most people, including Louie, only see pumpkins as something for breads or pies, there is an addition with a pumpkin in it that isn't bad, including just roasting the pumpkin or the seeds. Oh boy, with a ingredient that allows you to experiment with it like this one. I'ma feel like Senshi. Peppermint is good, but I feel, unless it's in a hard candy, like in a cane or hard mint, it loses a bit of itself, even in macron form. Like I said earlier, I don't think you have to remove every single grain of sand, but I think slurping the meat out of the exoskeleton is not only going to be tasty, but fun as well. The Arctic cannon larva seems to taste exactly the same as the armored cannon larva, but with the added benefit of snow cones. Spit roasting the secondary mascot of the franchise is not an image I would have expected Nintendo to bring to light, but they did, and good thing they did, because that seems pretty good. I think the orange dwarf bulborb having thick hides is what makes it such a difficult thing to prepare. But I also think that that's why they're the most delicious bread bug. The whip-tongue bulbarb is here since you still have all the benefits of all the other bulbarbs, but with the added long-ass tongue that has its own cooking methods that would be great in a sandwich. While the mama sheargrub is good for its novelty, Louie does say that it tastes much better after it lays its eggs. Also, that quiche is very good sounding. No one would abandon that. The armored cannon beetle is one of the only 3 creatures from the main games that don't have a recipe from Louie on them. The other 2 being Puffman and the Gulix. But at least with the armored cannon beetle, it's got its cousin, the horned cannon beetle, to show you where roughly it would be. And these guys have a lot of meat and are very likely have a similar taste to that of shellfish. If they were on this list, the armored ones would be one step below the horned, because the horned ones are more segmented and would be easier to get out of its shell. And while we're talking about creatures that aren't on the list, I'll say that the Puffman would be one step above the blue Pikmin, because I think they would taste like regular Pikmin, but with a bit of a mushroomy flavor added to it. And the Gulix would be above the Plasma Wraith, because I think it would have the same druggy effects, but those 2 nuclei might have something about them. Now that is a nice squash. You can make a lot of things with a zucchini like that. Anywhere from zucchini bread to zucchini noodles, or like Louie says, just zucchini stir fry. Stone fruits really are the pits. Affectionate. but the sourness of apricots are something that I can only enjoy a few times a year, and not in a seasonal way. Okay, I'm not too big on the redesign of these guys. The old one is much more fun to look at. But regardless, if you get a creepy chrysanthemum that looks like... or... I do think it would have a very similar taste to an artichoke. So yeah, it's going to be a good pizza topper. The old one would probably taste better though. I didn't learn that canned peaches taste nothing like the uncanned peaches until I was a full-on adult.
This isn't peach, this is peach syrup. Tinned peach syrup.
Regardless, actual peaches are pretty damn good. Need I say more than what Louie said in his review? Actually, I will. Have you ever tried Southern tomato pie? It's like a reverse deep dish pizza where the cheese is on the bottom and acts as the sauce, and the tomato is the topping. It's great, especially if you're like me, and don't really like the taste of marinara sauce. Okay, jamming up apricots does, in fact, enhance its own flavor, which is why the Love's Fortune cookie is up here. Although Louie is wrong in the order to eat the cookie. First you eat the petals, then the center, then the crumbs. Ah, that is a fine sandwich if I do say so myself, and I do say so myself. I'm surprised it took this long to get the method of wrapping your food in tinfoil before putting it on the grill. So the hairy bulborb is one of the ones that's gonna keep a lot of its juices because of this being a way to keep a lot of flavor in my experience. It's boba that turns into eggy brisket. That just sounds great.
Okay, it's not exactly calamari, but it is very similar sounding. And well, calamari is already good to begin with.
What can I say? Sticky crispy barbecue is just awesome. Louie does have good advice for enjoying a pudding like this. However, it's losing a lot of points for being caramel pudding. I'm just not a big fan of caramel. I don't necessarily hate caramel, but if this pudding were some other flavor, like coffee, it would have ranked higher. I honestly can't tell much of a difference between the flavor of an orange and a decoupon, mainly because decoupons are already a type of orange. So I'm grouping them together. Citrus Slump is one slot above because Louie does point out their stringy white stuff, which, because even though they aren't the best part of the orange, they are very much overlooked and can be enjoyed in the right headspace, or like how he said in the smoothie. I'm a fan of baseball, and a Bulbmin brat sounds like a perfect accompaniment for a ball game. Cherries are fun, especially when they're tart. Although they are best enjoyed with a friend while you spit out the pit into someone's garden. Weird thing about when I eat these checkered cookies is that I can never tell if the dark spots are chocolate flavored or they're just darker. But regardless, butter cookies are indeed very, very, very good. A chocolate macaron like this is pretty good, especially with how the chocolate filling looks. It's almost kind of like those Keebler Elf cookies that are reverse Oreos and are low-key better than actual Oreos. Honestly, anything but raw, a potato's gonna taste great. It really is the inverse of a sweet potato then. Personally, I prefer when they are added to a stew. But how do you prefer a potato? This is what I was talking about when I said peppermint. I'm assuming that this is indeed a peppermint candy cane and not like a berry flavored one or something like that. Is best enjoyed in hard candy form. Quick tip. When you make hot chocolate, use one of these to stir instead of a spoon. That way, you'll get an extra minty hot chocolate. This is mainly here because of the shrimp, and as much as I want to play the Forrest Gump clip, I'm going to say that shrimp is actually a very good gateway to help stop picky eaters from being picky. Examples, the first Japanese food I ever had was the shrimp tempura udon in Katsura Grill in Epcot's Japan Pavilion. The first ever spicy food I tried was spicy popcorn shrimp from a cheeseburger in paradise. Seriously, if you want to have a picky eater become more adventurous, and they're not allergic, shrimp is a good gateway to some more options. The SS berry sure is lucky that it's got a raspberry rather than a strawberry on top of it. Otherwise, I would have had to send it to the Shadow Realm. But it lucked out, and the combinations of the creamy center, the raspberry, and blueberry are pretty good. But the sum is not better than or equal to the individual parts. I wonder what they would call blueberry, though. It's never been a treasure before. Probably something along the lines of deceptive juice bomb.
Blueberries are fucking purple!
Yeah, the ultra spicy berries from the burgeoning spiderwort seem like they taste like spicy cranberries. That, coupled with the holiday season starting, has got me in a cheery mood. And because I want to cover the ground as well, even though they're not part of this specimen of burgeoning spiderwort, the purple ultra bitter berries kind of tell me that they kind of taste like regular cranberries. Now this is what a kiwi should be like. Tangy and sour. Although Louie is wrong about the fuzzy skin, kiwis are actually better if you eat them unpeeled. They end up being juicier and have a stronger taste. The important thing is to chew thoroughly if you go through with this method, because it does feel weird having a fuzzy thing going down your throat. Now, I wasn't always allergic to strawberries. It wasn't until I was 10 when I started having a reaction to them. But from what I can remember, raspberries are like strawberries, but tartar, and tend to pair better with other things. Easier. They're also softer, and that's also nice. Watermelon is great. Everybody knows this. Louie's hint here is also a good life hack. Also, anything with citrus will enhance the watermelon flavor, which is sometimes a necessity, because often I've had watermelons that are more water than melon, which is what keeps them out of the S rank.
Justice will be swift! Justice will be painful! It will be delicious!
Yeah, I wanted the tears to spell out Pikmin, but I still had one left over, so Top's tier is still S. It's the best of the best. Pretzels are great, especially the big, kind of dry Bavarian-style pretzels that use less sugar in their recipes. And while Louie prefers dipping them in sweet stuff, which I do from time to time, I prefer to have my pretzels dopped in mustard.
Pretzels dopped?
Plums are great, and not just in their potential as homemade jello, but any other way you can think to make them, into candies or pies, drinks, or raw.
Is hammer!
And it's good ham, too. Not that pre-packaged ham slices that are swimming in their own juices. But it's the good stuff reserved for holidays and parties. It may just be because I'm a Midwesterner, but a hot dish with these guys as the main meat does seem pretty appetizing to me. Louie really is underplaying how much he was obsessed with the glow sap during the story of Pikmin 4. He was obsessed with it to the point where he tried to kidnap, not Alf, Brittany, Charlie, but so he could get his hands on more of it. Not to mention that York Nell and Don Bergman do mention tastes great. And this is where the gold sap is produced, so there you go. Figs are overlooked here in America in their non-Newton form, but if you've ever had the chance to actually eat a fig, you know that you'll be in for a good day when you eat one. Just be sure to keep them away from donkeys. Apparently that's just too funny. Now, both Bug and Louie's recipe is giving gnocchi vibes, and those dumpling noodles are really fun and tasty to eat. I feel bad for those people who are cursed to have this as their food allergy. Peanuts are just that good. Bananas are actually considered to be the world's most popular fruit, and that's for good reason. They are, for lack of better words, is creamy and sweet. They are so popular that it's gotten to the point where Louie basically says that you're a basic bitch if you like them. I think muskmelons are much more superior melons to watermelons. Not only are they a little bit sweeter, they also got much more taste, way more consistency, and they are also way more juicy. There is a difference between juicy and watery, after all, if you forgot. This stew sounds great. The type of stew that ends up being so thick it's not served in a bowl, but on a plate. The way I see it, and judging by some of Downlow and Olimar's notes on these guys, as well as the notes on the Gildemander, I can say that the gold on this guy's back is the crystallized fat. So you're basically using its own flavored butter in its recipe. That's highly convenient. It's a salad with a satisfying crunch. What more can I say? Same thing I said about the Gildemander, but you know it's bigger, so it's got more meat and more of those gold butter things on its back. Can you make a satisfying meal out of just mushrooms? Absolutely you can, especially if they're big ones like the puff stool here. And apparently you cook this guy just like a normal mushroom, except for this one's got legs. You get 2 meals out of 1 with this guy, and as we have learned from all the other grub dogs, its meat is very versatile. It's always good to have options. And what's wrong with apples, if you please? Ain't they the finest fruit in all the land? Why, shoot, man, they take the cake. Just think, Louie, of all things that apples make. So you're telling me that this is all the flavor and nutrients of an egg mixed with the texture of a mollusk? This could possibly be one of the things I am pissed off the most that they don't exist in real life. Meaty spinach here would basically just take a step out of cooking whenever I make meaty spinach noodles. I do love saving time. Not a lot of people I know have the patience for make-ahead meals. I do, though. And this particular one just seems so good. While writing this, I only just realized that the next highest Dweevil is all the way at the bottom of C tier with the Titan one. What makes the Fiery Dweevil stand out so much? It's because it's supposedly a superior substitute to bacon bits. That's high marks, man. The fiery and watery blowhogs seem like they have similar tastes and juiciness and textures. So, with their melt-in-your-mouth sort of nature, this is possibly the best brisket you can get out of any of these creatures. The fiery one is a bit higher due to its inability to be overcooked. You know, sometimes it is simple things like sashimi fish that will make it to the top. I do hope that they taste like anchovies. You know, sometimes number 1 spot is gonna be a surprise to you for whatever reason. And not only does the recipe description for the Arctic cannon beetle sound delicious, it reminds me a lot of the diner scene in The Emperor's New Groove. You know, the one where Pacha eats that one pill bug. That always seemed like a very appetizing thing to me. So, what do you think? Do you agree with my list? Would you make any changes? Do you think I'm a freak for even making this video? Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to check out my Patreon. And, you know, while I'm at it, reap. I'm out. Bye.